This video covers the installation of resistor R6, the chip socket, integrated circuit IC2, and capacitors C6 and C7 for the Elenco AM radio kit. Be sure to read the helpful companion document linked in the video description prior to soldering. Now for R6, and if I'm not mistaken, the last of our resistors. Brown, black, black, gold. R6 connects here. There you go, R6. Now, as I was saying just down here, it doesn't matter to get a solder bridge there because they're already electrically connected, so I could just bend this up here. But for demonstration's sake, we'll bend it down. It's nice to have the leads fold directly out, but they don't need to. It's a good thing I kept that hole open, else I wouldn't have been able to insert this tool. Would have had to remove that solder with either a solder sucker or by heating it up with the soldering iron and trying to pull it away from the hole, which can be a little bit tricky. Well, we've finished the last of our resistors. Now, integrated circuit socket. Let's go back to this second bag that I opened. Now, on one side of this foam, there is an integrated circuit. On the other side, a socket. We'll be installing this socket. I want to be careful handling it because A, these pins are pokey, and B, if we bend them, they won't fit. We'll have to bend them back, and they can be a little brittle. Now this goes in here. You'll notice on the socket, there's a little bit of a notch cut out here. To this visual notch on the circuit illustration there. So I'm just going to lay this in. Whoops, have them offset. Okay, there we go. They just slide right in. The holes are cut correctly at the correct distances. Holding it in with my fingers. It's kind of hard to see them coming out, but they are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this screwdriver. I'm going to bend that back. I'm going to bend that back to hold them in. I don't need to bend more than those two. Just having those two will make it nice and secure. These are mighty close together. If you have not been careful about solder bridges before, this is the time to be careful. You do not want to create a connection between here and here, between here and here, or anywhere really. Sole exception being these two. It appears that they are electrically connected, but we'll try and do this well anyway. If I don't use too much solder, I'm not going to make a solder bridge. Whew. Now, maybe a little hard for you to see. This solder joint right here is a hole. Now this is an electrical and mechanical connection. It's not a perfect solder joint. If it were perfect, it would have solder all the way around. I'm going to see what I can do to rework this. Now, for reworking this, if I wanted to do it perfectly well, I'd use some flux. This cleans the solder that's already there so that it can receive more solder and wet properly. But that didn't come with the kit, and I don't expect the beginning solder to have any flux other than the flux that's in this solder wire itself, so I'm going to rework the joint without it. Let's see how that went. I like it, except I dragged a little bit of solder over here. I want to remove that because if it slips around, it might connect two solder joints that shouldn't be connected, forming a solder bridge that would change the function of the circuit, probably make it not work, or at least not work correctly. So you want to keep your eyes open for little pieces of solder and perhaps little pieces of lead. Make sure they were removed from the board before you turn anything on. All right, the socket is installed, and it will be used to receive this chip. So make sure you keep your hands on this chip set aside where it's not going to get knocked around. Socket. Now, C6. C6 goes there. Here's C6. Now, again, this type of capacitor has a polarity. It's important to make sure that it goes in correctly. The long lead is positive, short lead, as the packaging indicates, is negative. Now, this plus sign is supposed to be associated with that, I'm confident, but it's not obvious. So how could we tell? If there weren't a plus, how could we tell? Well, one, this is a little ground symbol, so we know that that is going to be 0 volts from the perspective of the circuit. So probably this is going to be a positive voltage. Some circuits will actually use negative voltages. Or if I trace this back, I see, oh, here's a switch, here's a battery, and this side of the battery is defined to be positive. So when the switch is closed, that side will be positive as well. So I am comfortable installing this capacitor there. Now, why didn't we install the capacitors at the same time? I don't know why they had us do things in this order, but my guess is I wanted to make sure we could install this on the front and on the back without being too crowded with components and leads and who knows what's sticking out. Looks good to me. Away the leads go. C7. Looks like this is the last of our capacitors. And that goes right here. Positive, long lead, negative, short lead. Watch this video to continue assembling your kit. If you have any questions about the material discussed in this video, please use the comments section below and we will get back to you as soon as possible. See you in the next clip.